Hi everybody, this is Bonnie Barker with Bonnie Bay Crochet, and today I wanted to show you how to make my Colossae cabled cardigan. It's kind of a mouthful of a name, but it is named after the ancient city of Colossae that was famous for their purple and reddish dyed wool. So this particular design can be made and worn as a cardigan, but if you decide to not crochet the sleeves, it makes a lovely vest. Let me show you some pictures of that right here. Just to be clear, this is an intermediate to an experienced level crochet design, but please don't let that put you off. If you are familiar with many of these crochet stitches and some cabling, you may be able to achieve it with practice. Well, let me go ahead and show you what you're going to need. For this project, I'm going to be using this beautifully hand-dyed yarn by Greenwood Fiberworks.com, and this is Simply Sock. It's a sock weight, which is also a #1 weight in the American system. This is also called fingering weight and is 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon. Each of these hanks has 463 yards, which is a very generous allotment, or 100 grams. Now, just to note, they do make another blend, which instead of the nylon has silk. So if you want to check out their website for that, and if you do go for that other yarn, just keep in mind that the yardage may differ slightly. Okay, so the number of hanks that I'll be using for this will be written right across the bottom of your screen. I'm going to recommend that you have a size G or 6 or 4.00 millimeter crochet hook for this project. And also, I recommend that you have a yarn needle and a pair of sharp scissors handy. Now let me say another word or two about the crochet hooks. This is a fitted garment, which means that the gauge is more important than it would be than if we were crocheting, let's say, a blanket or something that is not a fitted item. So do be sure to take the time. I know it's not a lot of fun, but take the time to check your gauge before beginning this project. It may be that in order to get the same gauge that I'm getting, you may have to bump up to a larger hook or maybe even go down to an even smaller size. This is really important so that you get the fit that you need. To start, we're going to begin with a slip knot. And we're going to start a starting chain of 139 chains. So once you have 139 chains, we're going to start by working a double crochet in the 4th chain from hook. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to work 1 double crochet in each chain across. You should have a total of 136 double crochets, and that's not including the chain 3 at the beginning. Now we're going to turn, chain 2, we're going to skip the first stitch, and working in the next, we are going to work a front post double crochet followed by a back post double crochet, front post, followed by a back post. So go ahead and work that all the way across the row. So after completing row number 2, we're going to work rows 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 the same way by starting with a chain 2, front post double crochet followed by a back post double crochet all the way across the row, and then work a half double in the turning chain. this is what you should have after completing 7 rows. And this should measure approximately 22 inches when laying flat. Of course, there will be quite a bit more ease than that built into this. Now we're going to start row number 8, which begins the foundations for the cables. I've started by chaining 2, and I am going to work wattle stitches. So we're going to skip the first stitch, and then to the second stitch we're going to work a single crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet. And that's what I like to call the wattle stitch, W-A-T-T-L-E stitch. Then we're going to skip 2 stitches as we work this foundation row, 1, 2, and then we're going to work another one. Again, that single crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet worked into the same space. And we're going to do this until we have 10 of these wattle stitches. Make sure you skip 2 stitches in between as you form these. 1, 2. So I'm going to go ahead and work these until I have 10 wattle stitches. Now that I've completed those 10 wattle stitches, we're going to work the foundation for the elongated cable. Although this one's not going to be really elongated, but it's going to be a little bit on the shorter side. We're going to skip 2 stitches because we have that from the wattle stitch, and then we're going to work front post double crochets in each of the next 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to work a half double worked into the top loops of that stitch, and then 3 more front post double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. I'll go ahead and pause. So you see 3 front post, half double worked into the top loops like you normally would, and then 3 front post double crochets. After that, we're going to work 2 wattle stitches, and we're going to start in the next stitch and work that single crochet, chain 1, double crochet, again skipping 2 stitches, and then work another one. Okay, just like that. And now we're going to work the foundation for our twin cable. So we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, and we're going to work 3 front post double crochets followed by a half double, and we're going to do this a total of 3 times. So that's 1, and again we work 3 front post double crochets and then a half double. That's 2, and the third set, 3 front post double crochets and then a half double. That's the third set, and then we're going to work one more set, just the 3 front post double crochets. Okay, just like that. And if you would like, what you can do to be helpful is to put a stitch marker at the beginning of these cables if you'd like, or even at the end, because we're going to be facing them again. Well, let me go ahead and do one at the beginning just so that we have a reference here, something to visually remind us. Okay, so I'm going to put one there, and then I'm going to put another one at the beginning of this stitch, which was the first elongated cable that we made. There we go. And I'll add these in later on these other cables as we go across. Okay, so now we're going to do 2 more waddle stitches starting in that next stitch. So that's 1, skip 2 stitches, and 2, skip 2 stitches, and we're going to do another foundation. Let's go ahead and wrap the hook first. For the elongated cable, 1, 2, 3 front post double crochets, followed by a half double, and 3 more front post double crochets, okay, that is the smaller of the 2 cables. And then we're going to do 2 more waddle stitches. These are just the separators between these cables. 1, skip 2 stitches, and then the second waddle stitch, just like that, and then skip 2, and then we're going to do another foundation just like we did here with the 4 columns with the half double crochets in between. So we do 3 front post double crochets and then a half double, and then next stitch 3 more front post double crochets and then a half double, and the next stitch. I'm going to do this again, 3 more front post double crochets and then a half double. So we have a total of 1, 2, 3 columns followed by the half double, and now just 3 front post double crochets for that last column, or what is the foundation for a column, so to speak, that surrounds or that these cables are built upon. Okay, now we have to do 2 more waddle stitches. This really is not as difficult as it may seem. Skip 2. It's a little tricky getting started, but once you establish the cabling system, it is very visual and very, very fun to crochet. Okay, it's worth the effort to put into this now. Okay, skip the next 2. And the last is another elongated cable with those 3 front post double crochets, half double, that next stitch, 3 more front post double crochets. Let's pause to see what we have here. Okay, just to make this easier to understand, I've gone ahead and color coordinated some of these stitch markers. So this stitch marker marks the shorter or the smaller elongated cable here with the 2 columns that are ready to go. And we have, of course, the 2 waddle stitches. And then we have the 4 columns or sets. When I say column, I mean sets of 3 front post double crochets, and of course separated with the half doubles in the middle. And I've marked that with the darker purple color. And then we have another elongated cable, and then another twin cable, and then another elongated cable. So after working that last cable, we're going to return to the waddle stitches and working in that next stitch. We're going to work a single crochet, chain 1, double crochet, skip 2, etc., and work this all the way to the end. You should have a total of 10 waddle stitches, and I'll show you how this ends. After working this all the way across, we're going to skip the last 2 stitches and work a single crochet in the chain 2 turning chain. All right, and then we're going to turn and we're going to begin row number 9. So this is what you should have after completing row number 8. And you can see that I've used color-coded stitch markers to show you where these cables are. All right, so now we're ready to work row number 9. Okay, we're going to chain 2 and we're going to skip the single crochet and the double crochet of these wattle stitches, and we're going to start our first stitch in the chain 1 space of the wattle stitch, and we're going to work another wattle stitch, single crochet, chain 1, double crochet. We're going to work a lot of these in this project. I think it makes a lovely crochet fabric. And then in the next one, and until you do all 10, working in all 10 of these chain 1 spaces. So go ahead and work those wattle stitches in those spaces. And now that we get to our cables, this is going to be a rather easy row. We can see that the light stitch marker indicates that we have the elongated cable on the other side. So we're simply going to work 3 back post double crochets over those 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, a half double worked into the top loops of the half doubles, and that these stitches are going to be spacers to help us to define our cables, and then 3 more back post double crochets. We're just going to leave that stitch marker in just to remind us of what we're working on. And when we get to the 2 wattle stitches, working in the chain 1 spaces only, work the wattle stitch, which is really a combination of 3 stitches together, but it just makes it easier to just call it by one thing. And in the next chain 1 space, go ahead and work that there. And then now we come to the larger cable, and it's marked with the darker stitch marker, and we're going to do that across by working 3 back post double crochets, half double, work into the half double, the top loops, and then again 3 more back post double crochets, and then a half double worked into the next half double, and then we do that again, 3 more back post double crochets, half double, and then again 3 more back post double crochets to complete this twin cable. And we're going to leave that stitch marker in just as a reminder, and we're going to do this pretty much across, again working another wattle stitch worked into the chain 1 space of the wattle stitch from the previous row. And so let's go ahead and take a look at this, and I'll show you what we're going to do. We're going to do this again. We're going to do the, well, I'll just do it with you since this is the first time through this. 3 more back post double crochets. See, once you've done this a couple of times, it's very redundant, which is a good thing. And then a half double in that next space, and 3 more back post double crochets, and you can see that we're on the back side of the elongated cable, which is the smaller cables for this particular project. Let's go ahead and grab all the strands of that yarn. There we go. Now we're going to work into the wattle stitches, work into both of those, and again I'm going to just go ahead and talk you through the rest of this. 3 more back post doubles, a half double, 3 back post double crochets, half double, 3 back post, half double, 3 back post, and then waddle stitch, and then another smaller cable, 3 back post double crochets, half double, 3 back post, and then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 waddle stitches. So, and at the end of this row, we're going to work in this chain, 2 turning chain, we're going to work a single crochet. So go ahead and finish row number 9, which is actually row 2 of the cabling section, but we're going to call this row 9. Now for row 10, we're going to continue on with these waddle stitches. In fact, every row is going to start and end the same way by working a chain 2 and working those waddle stitches into the chain 1 spaces of the waddle stitches from the previous row. So go ahead and work those 10 stitches. Now we've come to the elongated cable. Let me go ahead and put the stitch marker in the front there so that it alerts us to that. And what I'm going to show you here is the way we're going to cross all of these elongated cables. We're going to skip the 3 front post stitches there, and we're going to work a half double into the half double. Now we're going to work front post treble crochets into the next 3 stitches. We only use front post trebles when crossing the cables. So we work 3 of those, working in front of those 3 cables plus the half double, so really working in front of those 4 stitches. We're going to front post treble in each of these stitches, starting with the one that's the first that we skipped. This is the furthest away from our hook, and then the second one, and then the third one. And now we get to the waddle stitches, and you know what to do. Work waddle stitches in the chain 1 spaces. Okay, and let's go ahead and push this. These stitch markers tend to have a mind of their own, but just push that to the front just so that we know. Oh, let me go ahead and put it in a different place here. Let's just bring it to the front here. I don't want it to get entangled in the stitches. Well, I'll move it in a minute. All right, so, well, let's go ahead and get it in the front. There it goes. Okay, now we have 4 columns here for the twin cables. Now I call them twins because they're going to be inside these columns. So let me go ahead and show you what I'm going to have you do. We're going to go ahead and just work front post double crochets in the first 3 stitches here. And then a half double in the next half double. And now these 2, which are the 2 columns in the center, there are 4 columns here, just to be clear. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 4 sets of the 3 post stitches. And so these 2 are going to just be working as columns on the outside, and these are the 2 that we are going to cross this go round. We're going to skip the next 3 stitches, half double in that next half double, front post trebles in the next 3 stitches, and I will say I really love the way this yarn is so smooth. It's just really crocheting up so beautifully. Okay, now working in front of those last 4 stitches, we're going to front post treble in each of these 3 stitches that we just skipped. It's 1, 2, and 3. After that, we're going to half double in the next half double, And then the next 3 stitches are just front post double crochets, not trebles, but double crochets. And I'll pause after this and show you what you should have for that twin cable. It should look like this. Okay, and then we get back to working the wattle stitches in each of those chain 1 spaces. And because this is the first time you're seeing the crossing of these cables, I'm going to go ahead and work this entire row with you. Okay, so now we've come to the smaller, the elongated cable. So we're going to skip the next 3 stitches, half double, that next stitch, front post treble in the next 3 stitches, working in front of those 4 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 3 stitches that we just skipped. I promise I'm not going to draw out each row in quite the same manner. Not sure there's enough space in the internet for that, but I will give you as detailed instruction as I can on the first few rows, and then after that you should understand it better, and if not, you can always rewind. So the next 2, the wattle stitches, we're going to go ahead and just work these. And then now we come to the other large cable, and just like before, we're just going to work 3 front post double crochets on that first column, since we are crossing the 2 columns that are framed by these outer columns. Half double, the next half double, and now these are the 2 that we're going to cross. So I'm going to do that again for you. Skip the next 3 stitches, half double, that next stitch, front post treble in the next 3 stitches, go ahead and pause so you get a good look at that. Now working in front of those last 4 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 3 stitches that we just skipped. Half double and that next half double. Also, let me just state, notice that there are not half doubles on the outsides of these cables, but they're only spacers in between on the inside of the cables, okay? And then the last 3 stitches are just front post double crochets. And now the wattle stitches, we work those. And then a wattle stitch, and we come to another elongated cable, which is the smaller of the cables that we're going to be making. Skip 3 stitches. What I mean by smaller, it's only 2 columns wide, not 4. So I worked a half double there, and then we're going to work 3 front post trebles in the next 1 in each of the next 3 stitches. Working in front of those last 4 stitches, we're going to front post treble in the 3 stitches that we skipped. And then now all we have left are wattle stitches in each of the next 10 wattle stitches in the chain 1 spaces, and then we're going to work a single crochet in the chain 2 space to end the row. So this is what you should have after completing 10 rows. Now on to row 11. And also for the record, on the odd number rows, the back side's going to be facing. On the even number of rows, at least for the back section, the front side will be facing for the even numbers. All right, for row number 11, you guessed it, chain 2, and we're going to skip to that first chain 1 space and work waddle stitches in those first 10 spaces. You should probably be getting very good at these even early in this design. Now that we get to the back side of the first cable, we are going to work back post double crochets in the first 3 stitches, and you can see that these are the stitches that are on top of the other side. These are the stitches that are facing outward on the other side, which is the front side. Now in between the last stitch and the next stitch, we're going to work a half double right in the center where the cables cross, and then 3 more back post double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. There we go. And then again, waddle stitch, worked in those chain 1 spaces. And now we come to the large cable, or the twin cable. We're going to work 3 back post double crochets, half double into half double, and now we come to those 2 columns that were crossed. We're going to work it the same way that we just did the elongated cable, with 3 back post double crochets, a half double worked in the center, and then 3 more back post double crochets, and then a half double worked into the half double, 3 more back post double crochets, okay. So that's what you're going to do when you work across the large the twin cable. Okay, so now we do waddle stitch in each of the next 2 waddle stitches. And then we're going to repeat that again. So I'm going to just talk you through the rest of this. Oh, actually, let me go ahead. I'll show you one more demonstration of how to work across the row after a cable has been crossed. So again, 3 back post double crochets, and in between that last stitch and the next stitch, this is the center where the cable crossed, work a half double. So it's not actually into a stitch, but in between the stitches, and then 3 more back post double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. So let me go ahead and give you a view of that. What's really nice is when you turn, you can see that these cables, here we go, there's 1, they're starting to look like something. At least you see that it has been crossed. Once we do a few more rows, it will look even better. So go ahead and continue working this across. Let's go ahead and turn it with the back side facing with waddle stitch, and again 3 back post doubles, half double, 3 back post doubles, half double in between those stitches where the cables cross, and then 3 more back post double crochets, half double, 3 more back post double crochets, waddle stitch, and then again 3 back post doubles, half double in between where the cables cross, and 3 more back post doubles, and then 10 waddle stitches and a single crochet at the end of the row in the turning chain. So go ahead and finish row 11. Now for row 12, I've gone ahead and worked my chain 2 and a wattle stitch in each of those 10 chain 1 spaces of the wattle stitches from the previous rows. Okay, so now for the cables, all we're going to do is basically a repeat of row number 8. We're going to work front post double crochets over each of those post stitches for all of the cables, and then a half double in the top of that half double, and then 3 more front post double crochets. And let me just go ahead and talk you through the rest of this. Wattle stitches in each of those wattle stitches, and when you come to the large cable, we're just going to work front post double crochets, half double front post. Make sure you work 3 for each of these columns. Half double, 3 front post, half double, 3 front post double crochets. And that is basically what we're going to do all the way across. And don't forget 10 wattle stitches at the end and a single crochet worked into the chain 2 space. So go ahead and work row number 12. This is what you should have after completing 12 rows. I hope you can enjoy how these cables are forming. All right, so now for row number 13. Again, we start with the chain 2, and we're going to go ahead and work those 10 wattle stitches. Let me just go ahead and talk you through this. And on the back side of these cables, we're going to work back post double crochets and half doubles and back post double crochets in each of those stitches, wattle stitches, and again back post double crochets, half double, back post, half double, back post, again 3 of those, half double, and 3 more back post double crochets, wattle stitches in the wattle stitches, and all that again very, very visual, and then 10 wattle stitches at the end and a single crochet in that last space. If you need more detailed information, you can go back and look at row number 9. I'm going to be working this the same exact way, but I'm just figuring if you're an intermediate crocheter, I don't want to bore you to tears. I want you to be able to enjoy the visualness of this particular design. Now for row 14, I've gone ahead and worked the chain 2 and the 10 wattle stitches, and it is going to be time to cross a couple of these cables again. And let me just mention that the cable crossing here occurred on row 10, and just for the record, every 4 rows it's going to be time to cross the cable. So we crossed the cable on row 10, then we had row 11, which is the stitch, the row that works the half double crochet in between where the cables cross, and then we have row 12 and 13, which is just working the front and the back post on these cables, and again row 14 we are going to cross it again. Now that's just for the elongated cables. For the twin cable, it's going to be a little bit of a variation on that, but I will get to that in just a bit. So we're going to skip the first 3 stitches just for a refresher. Half double in that next stitch, and front post treble in the next 3 stitches. Now working in front of those last 4 stitches we just made, we're going to front post treble in the 3 stitches that we skipped. Again, we're just working over the post stitches. And 3. And then again, half doubles. I'll go ahead and work those with you. Just like that. And so now we can see more of a cable that is formed. It looks more like a cable now instead of just crossed cables or crossed columns rather. Okay, so now for this we're just going to cross the cable in the center. We're going to continue to grow these other columns. So let's go ahead and work 3 front post double crochets on the 2 columns that frame the cable, and they are going to be part of the crossing the next cable that is formed. Then we're going to again cross the cables, skip the next 3, half double in that next stitch, front post trebles in the next 3 stitches, working in front of those last 3 stitches. Go ahead and work front post trebles in those 3 stitches that were skipped. And half double in that next stitch, and then front post doubles and the next 3. Let me go ahead and grab that again, and the next 3 stitches. So let's go ahead and take a look. So this is what this cable looks like, and this is what the next the cable that's framed with the 2 columns looks like. All right, so we're just going to continue that across the row. If you need to back this up to the beginning of the row to see how to cross the cables, you can certainly do that. So wattle stitch, we're going to cross these cables, 2 wattle stitches. Again, front post double crochets here, cross these 2 columns, and then front post doubles only here, wattle stitches, and cross this cable, and then 10 wattle stitches, and then a single crochet worked into the chain 2 turning chain, and then go ahead and begin the following row, which is row number 15, and work those wattle stitches, and then I'll give you further instructions on where to go from there. Now to start row 15, I've gone ahead and worked those wattle stitches, and again, this is the row that we work after the cables have crossed, and I'll just go ahead and show you how to do this. Again, back post double crochet. Remember, the trebles are only for the crossing of the cables. So we work 3 back post double crochets, a half double crochet in between where the cables crossed, and then 3 more back post double crochets. Okay, then we're going to work wattle stitches in each of the wattle stitches, and over the larger cable, again, 3 back post doubles, half double, 3 back post doubles, a half double in between the last stitch and the next stitch where those cables crossed, and then 3 more back post double crochets, half double, 3 back post doubles, and then it again repeats with the wattle stitch, and again the back side of the crossing of the cables. So go ahead, again, 3 back post doubles, half double in between where those cables cross, and then 3 more back post double crochets, and that repeats itself across the row. 10 wattle stitches, and then a single crochet in the turning chain. So go ahead and complete row 15, and then go ahead and start row 16 with the chain 2 and those 10 wattle stitches. And for row 16, let me give you kind of a larger assignment. For row 16, we're just going to have the straight 3 front post doubles, half double, 3 front post doubles, and you know the wattle stitches and so forth. And we're going to just work that all the way across on all these cables, just working the front post double crochets and then a half double in between. And then row 17 is going to be worked with the back side facing, and you're just going to work back post double crochets over the cables and then a half double where the half doubles belong. So go ahead and work, finish rows 16 and 17 as described using only the front post Again, 4 front post double crochets for row 16 and then back post double crochets for row 17. So that way we can get 3 rows knocked out, and then I'll show you where to go from there. This is what you should have after completing 17 rows. I hope you like the way this is coming out so far. All right, so now for row 18, I've gone ahead and worked those first wattle stitches, of course, chain 2 at the beginning of the row. And it's time for us to cross these cables again. I'm going to just go ahead and work it from here to here. I'm going to cross this cable in the same way that we've been crossing it, but we're going to do a little different, something a little different for this. It's something that I've not done before in my design work. So we're going to, again, skip those 3 stitches, half double in the next half double, front post trebles in the next 3 stitches, working in front of those 4 stitches. We're going to front post treble in each of these stitches that we just skipped. Okay, so that's nothing new there. This is just a continuation, and you will continue crossing this cable after every 4 rows just until we get to the end of this section, or until we complete the back. That will just continue on, as well as the wattle stitches here. All right, so we're going to skip the next 3 stitches, half double that next stitch. We're going to skip 3 more stitches, and we're going to work a double crochet, not a half double, but a double crochet in that next half double. Now we're going to work front post trebles the next 3 stitches, we just pause to show you what I have at that point. And we're going to work another double crochet worked into the top of that half double. This is just for crossing the twin cables here. So we're going to work front post trebles in the next 3 stitches. So you see, we're going to be crossing a lot of stitches at once. Just hang with me and you'll understand what we're doing in just a second. So you can see how this looks at this point. So what we're going to do is we're going to come from here all the way over here, and we're going to work 3 front post trebles. We're going to work an additional half double in the same space as this half double, and then 3 more treble crochets, front post trebles in these 3 stitches. Okay? So come all the way across. We're going to work 3 front post trebles, and a half double in the next half double. And this is the half double that we're going to use. The other one is more of a placeholder, and we're not going to be working in that any further, and we'll discuss that on the next row. And then 3 more front post trebles, 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to go right from here to working into the wattle stitches. So it's going to be a little bit of a reach. So go ahead and work that wattle stitch. So let me show you what we should have here. So as you can see, these columns are curving inward. All right, so let's go ahead and continue across the row with another wattle stitch. And I'm going to go ahead and skip these 3 stitches. I'm going to go ahead and cross this cable. This is in the usual manner, but I'm going to work this with you because I want to be sure that you understand how to do the twin cable crossing once again. I will do that for you one more time. You can always back up the video and look at this too if you need more review. Working in front of those last 4 stitches, we front post treble, and those 3 stitches that we just skipped. And then now we work those wattle stitches. So again, crossing these cables, the twin cables, we're going to skip those 3 stitches, half double, and that half double. Skip the next 3 stitches. We're going to double crochet in that next half double. Then we're going to work front post trebles in each of the next 3 stitches. Then we're going to work another double crochet in that half double, and then 3 more front post trebles. And I'm going to pause so that you can see that I've skipped these and these. So actually this was a double crochet in this half double, 3 front post trebles, a double crochet, 3 front post trebles, and now working in front of all 8 stitches, we're going to come all the way across to that first set of 3 post stitches that we skipped, and we're going to work 3 front post trebles. Now do work these on the looser side. You don't want to have these too tight because these really need to be just a tad bit looser on your tension as you're bringing these across. Now this is going to it gets a little bit messy here. After those 3, there is a half double right here. It's right before these 3 stitches, so make sure you add another half double there. Again, this is the one that we are going to work in. And then 3 more front post treble crochets, worked on the looser, just slightly looser side. Doesn't have to be crazy loose, but definitely not tight here. Okay. And then reach all the way over to the next wattle stitch, that chain 1 space, and work your wattle stitch, and that will anchor this cable. So this is how those should look as you work across this row. And then we're going to finish this out. I'm going to just talk you through this. Again, this is row 18. We have another wattle stitch here. Go ahead and cross these cables in the normal manner, and then work your 10 wattle stitches, a single crochet in the chain 2 space, and then go ahead and turn and work beginning row 19 with those 10 wattle stitches, and I'll show you how to work behind the cables. Now for row 19, I've gone ahead and worked the wattle stitches across those 10 wattle stitches. I'm going to show you how to work along the back side after we've crossed these twin cables. All right, so we are simply going to, this is working over the elongated cable, the single cable. And we're just going to do 3 back post double crochets just like before. Half double worked in between that last stitch and next stitch. And 3 more back post double crochets. Okay, we're going to skip to the wattle stitches and work waddle stitches in those chain 1 spaces, and then we get to the interesting part here. And there's nothing new really here. This is pretty much the same that we've been doing. It's going to look a little different. So we work 3 back post double crochets, and there is a half double. They're a little trickier to see. Let me go ahead and stretch it out. There it is. Half double. That was actually a double crochet, but we're going to go back to working a half double in those. And then there are 3 more back post double crochets. These are all in a line, but they're kind of bunched up, so you may have to just pull them out just a little bit. Now, this is the center where the cable, the center cable, so go ahead and add a half double crochet in there. So let's stop and take a look at this. So we have 3 back post doubles, a half double which was worked into that double crochet, 3 back post doubles, now a half double worked in between where these cables all crossed, 3 more back post double crochets, we're almost there. And then now we find the next half double. Let's see, where are we? Okay, so the half double is actually a double crochet. We work a half double in the top of that, and then there are 3 more back post double crochet. So these are pretty much straight across. Let me go ahead and finish these and I'll show you. Okay, and then after that we go back to the waddle stitches. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So if you see the stitches, this is the same order in which they appear, so you can kind of pull this out. Let me show you another one. This is the one that we haven't worked yet. So you can see the stitches are kind of in a Z or an S, going this way, and then this way. And that's the order. If you pull them out straight, that's the order in which they appear. It can get a little dicey looking at it, but once you cross them and then you work the row after that, this is what they look like. Okay. And this is going to look a lot better once we work additional rows for these cables. All right, so we're just going to work this across the row. You know how to cross this cable. And if you want to see, well, let me go ahead and work to this point, and then I will do this again for you in case you need to look at that again. So I've gone ahead and worked along that regular single cable. So let's go ahead and work this double cable again, or the twin cable. So let's go ahead and work 3 back post double crochets, and let's go ahead and pull this out a bit, and you can see the next stitch is right here. Go ahead and work a half double there, and then we have 3 more. You can see them on this side, 3 more in a row, and we're going to work back post double crochets over those. They were trebles on the other side, or the last row. Okay, so just to review, we've worked 3 back post doubles, a half double, 3 back post doubles, and that brings us to the center where the cables were crossed. Go ahead and add a half double crochet in there, and then 3 more back post double crochets, and then a half double in that next stitch, which happens to be a double crochet, and then 3 more back post double crochets. And then we go right into the waddle stitch at that point. So go ahead and finish out this row with the back side working over this single cable, and then the 10 wattle stitches and a single crochet in the turning chain, and go ahead and start with row 20 with those wattle stitches, and then I'll give you some instructions going forward. Now for row 20, I've gone ahead and worked those wattle stitches at the beginning, and we're just going to again work front post double crochets over all of these post stitches, and after we do those, we're going to work half double crochets in the half doubles. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and work those other 3 front post double crochets, just working over the single cable, and then I'm going to show you how the twin cables will work. Let's go ahead and work those wattle stitches. I'm sure you know how to do these very well at this point if you've gone 20 rows, and we're still friends here. Okay, so now we're going to work the front post double crochets, and again we're working them. Let me go ahead and, if you just kind of look at it this way, you're working in the order that the stitches appear. They do take a little bit of a zigzag there, but they do appear in the order. So 1, 2, 3 front post doubles, and you're going to have half doubles to work in across here. So there's a half double there, and then now on this cable section, 3 front post. Let's try to find that. There we go. Double crochet, half double in that half double. Let's try that one again. It didn't want to come through. There we go. And then again, 3 more front post double crochets, and then a half double in the half double, and then again 3 more front post double crochets. Okay, and so that's what we're going to do as we work across. So go ahead and work row number 20, and for row number 21 we're going to have the back side facing, and you're just going to be working back post double crochets across those stitches and half doubles in between them. So go ahead and finish row 20 and then work row 21. Okay, at this point we are ready to start row 22, but let's take a look at what we have at this point. Now for row 22, it is time to cross the elongated cables again, but now taking one look at these cables, they're not even near close. So let me give you some information about the stitching and the rows. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to repeat or just continue on in the pattern stitch that you see here, but there are some differences. Like I said, we're going to cross the cables here on row 22. These cables will cross every 4 rows. Okay, now this section where the rows were crossed, which is right down here, this is actually going to be a 10 row repeat. So instead of crossing the cables to begin that process of this section every 8 rows, it's going to begin every 10 rows. And so, like I said at the beginning, this is kind of a pattern dependent design. I would encourage you, if you need specifics and you cannot go strictly with the visual on when and where to cross the cables, to definitely check the information in the written pattern. All right, the back has come to the point where it is time for me to work the armhole openings, or at least to come in and decrease along the edges for when I can come in and add the arm openings. Okay, so let me just show you what I've done. You see where I've started? And I have repeated that motif 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 additional times. And so now I'm going to go ahead and turn. So after the first chain 1, we're going to skip to the chain 1 space, and we're just going to work a slip stitch in that space, and then a slip stitch in that next single crochet, and then we're going to work a slip stitch in the next chain 1 space and in that next single crochet, and then we are going to resume working in pattern stitch. So go ahead and chain 1 and work that next wattle stitch and continue working in pattern stitch all the way across until you get to the end of the row. I'll show you how to end this because obviously we're going to end it at least 2 wattle stitches short of completing the row. And I'm going to recommend that you add a stitch marker. I needed to pause to get my stitch marker. And I'm going to have you mark that very first wattle stitch that we just completed this row. We're not going to work over these stitches any longer, okay, as we go forward on the remainder of this back section. After we've worked all the way across till we have 3 wattle stitches left, this is regardless of the size that you're making, and go ahead and work that last wattle stitch. And we're not going to work in those other 2 stitches, but go ahead and work a slip stitch in that single crochet of that wattle stitch that you just worked in. So let's go ahead and turn. And we're going to chain 1, and we're going to work a single crochet only in the first wattle stitch of the row, and then we will return to the pattern stitch working those wattle stitches. And what you can do is add a stitch marker to that single crochet. Let me go ahead and do that. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to put that stitch marker in the very first wattle stitch of the row. We're not going to be working on these stitches again as far as working on the back goes. So we're going to just continue on in pattern stitch until we get to the last stitch of the row, and I'll show you what to do with that. So I'm coming to the end of the second row of the armhole portion, and let me show you what I'm going to have you do. So we marked the first wattle stitch. We're just going to work a single crochet there and let that be that. And then so now we're going to turn. I'm going to give you a view of these decreases here. Okay. Now what we're going to do is just to continue to work in pattern stitch with the chain 2, and then just work in wattle stitches all the way across. So we're going to work that all the way across, and when you get to the end of the row, we're going to have 7 wattle stitches for the size that I'm making, and then I'm going to have you work that single crochet in the top of the single crochet, and that will end the row. And so then you will just continue working in pattern stitch until the section from the arm decrease upward is approximately 9 inches, or however long you wish this to be. Here's a photo of the back when completed. Once you complete this, please go to video number 2, which is the second of 3 videos in this series. The links will be in the video description.